Today is the day that a lot of you have been waiting for. This should be the last time that I'm covering John and Jane. But the last episode doesn't come easy, so strap yourselves in.
You know, I've already started reading about that. Many evolutionists believe there are probably 5 different massive extinctions in Earth's history. You can see them right here. They date these extinctions by where they believe they see them in the geologic column.
They keep saying this. They keep saying that scientists date fossils and such based on the geological column, or by strata, but this is only half right. Reputable scientists will use multiple methods in order to date something. This almost always includes radiometric dating, but could also include other things like index fossils. It's not like we're banking on this one thing to construct a whole narrative. That's kinda what you're doing. There are many facts that agree with each other in order to give us the dates that we have.
So the most famous one is the huge asteroid, right?
Yeah, right here it says, evidence shows that at the end of the Cretaceous period, a huge asteroid crashed into Earth. And then, about that same time, dinosaurs and many other species went extinct.
About that time?
Well, this theory's had some problems. First, some scientists dated the dinosaur extinction 300,000 years after they say the asteroid hit.
Little delayed action there.
You seem to misunderstand how this extinction event worked. It's not like the asteroid hit the dinosaurs, all of the dinosaurs, and only the dinosaurs to kill them all at the same time. There is such thing as a delayed extinction, and it can be caused by pollution, loss of habitat, or loss of mutualist species, all of which could have been caused by the asteroid.
Another study suggested that the asteroid was too wimpy to cause the mass extinction.
I'd like to see the citation for this one. But even if it was from a reputable study, there are numerous amounts of studies that are directly contrary to this, so it's not reasonable to doubt the entire thing based on this one study. Large meteors and asteroids release huge amounts of energy, but again, this extinction event wasn't due solely to the impact. The impact had lingering effects, like the release of sulfuric acid into the atmosphere since it hit rocks with sulfur in it, and also a massive dust cloud which would have formed and caused what's called an impact winter.
Another team claims that they found dinosaur fossils that lived past the impact.
Which doesn't actually go against the scientific consensus.
So, it's far from settled.
Is the same thing true for other mass extinctions?
Right here it says, until recently, researchers looked for a single cause for each mass extinction. Then it continues. Many mass extinctions, however, were probably caused by several factors, working in combination. Volcanic eruptions, moving continents, and changing sea levels.
You mean they only have several different ideas about what caused mass extinctions?
Right.
That's not what they said at all. They said that a lot of them could have been caused by multiple things. And you don't need to know exactly how they happened in order to know that they did happen. But why is it unreasonable to think that many things happening at the same time could cause an increase in the number of extinctions? There's evidence for all of this. It's not like we're just making it up.
But they just listed everything that would be taking place during the worldwide flood.
Wow, you're right. You know, Genesis 7:23 says,
this fits perfectly with all the massive fossil graveyards we find all around the world.
When I try to research such fossil graveyards, guess what comes up? A bunch of creationist websites. It seems like only creationists are running with this idea of fossil graveyards, presumably only to make the idea of fossils more vague and unnuanced than they really are.
For example, at the Lance Creek Formation in Wyoming, we found lots of species of dinosaurs mixed with birds, fish, crocodiles, lizards, snakes, turtles, frogs, salamanders, and small mammals.
None of which goes against the scientific consensus at all. What you just listed were types of animals that have been around for a long time, including the times that the Lance Formation was dated at. And yes, that's times plural, because this formation was made of several layers, with the top layers being dated younger than the bottom layers, and there's even different types of animals within different layers. Funny how that works. But show me a human or a mammoth next to a trilobite, because then you might have a case.
All laid down by water catastrophe in sedimentary layers.
No, actually, it was deposited by ordinary streams over about 3 million years. There's no indication that it was catastrophic. And by the way, I found the AIG article that you probably got this information from, and it seems to only cite one study from a small team of Seventh-day Adventists, so there's obviously some bias there.
You know, I've heard that almost every dinosaur graveyard in the world shows fossils deposited by or in watery mud or sand.
Yeah, that's kinda just how fossils work. Sediment deposition is by far the easiest of the few ways that fossils can form. If an animal dies as it sinks in mud, or if it is covered up by sediments from a water source, then it can be preserved, unlike if it died in, say, my front yard.
And even more incredible, many dinosaur fossils are found in a classic death pose with their necks arched back, possibly from choking.
And the only way that can happen is the entire world flooding over, I guess.
Exactly. So, if you take their geologic column and squeeze it down into one event, the worldwide flood.
That does better explain what we see.
Right.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't explain strata at all. It certainly doesn't explain why upper strata are consistently dated younger than lower strata. It doesn't explain how we can trace lineages through the layers, and it doesn't explain why we only find dinosaur fossils up to a certain group of layers. I mean, I could go on, but you know as well as I do that it doesn't explain everything that you're blatantly ignoring.
And there's a lot of volcanic material mixed into these layers. Vast amounts of molten material entered the ocean. That's what makes up seafloors around the world.
That doesn't mean that it's the only way that it can happen, and it certainly doesn't mean that the entire world being flooded over is the best explanation for that. Maybe the areas in which we find volcanic material were near volcanoes. Think about it.
And that relates to the Ice Age. Storm tracking models show that warm oceans would cause severe storms and lead to massive snowfall.
This is only a half-truth. Yes, warmer oceans do increase snowfall, but only in areas where it was already cold. See, warmer oceans increase precipitation of all types. It doesn't add a cooling mechanism. Adding massive amounts of heat to the oceans doesn't make anything colder.
Wait, you're saying hotter oceans make colder continents? Sounds weird.
Weird, but true.
Nope. Adding massive amounts of heat to a system only makes the system hotter. In fact, the geological record seems to show that ice ages were started in times where the continents stopped the flow of warm water from the equator to the poles, which is essentially the opposite of what you're saying.
Plus, volcanic dust and debris would have blocked out the sun during the summer, so the fallen snow would not have melted.
Yes, this could be and probably was a factor that led to ice ages. But why do we need God for that? And
why do you think volcanoes were part of the flood? It was just 40 days of rain, right?
The rain didn't begin until after the fountains of the Great Deep burst forth, according to Genesis 7:11.
Oh, I see. You're changing the definition of fountains of the Great Deep. And I understand why you would, because if you actually looked it up, you'd figure out that the term Great Deep actually meant tehom, which is a bunch of water underneath the earth and a part of the cosmic ocean. So it's easier for you to redefine this term in accordance to our modern conception of the universe in order to make it seem like the ancient Jews didn't have a ridiculous model of the universe. But they did, and the Bible shows that in many places. This is one of them.
Okay, so that explains one ice age. Weren't there like 4 or 5?
Well, evolutionists don't have a satisfactory explanation for one ice age, let alone 4 or 5.
Just because we don't have the exact details of how it happened does not mean that we don't have evidence that it happened. When we see separated layers of glacial sediments and erratics, as well as other evidence all around the world, the best explanation for that is separated ice ages, even if that doesn't tell us exactly how it happened.
But the flood gives enough calamity in a short amount of time to actually make an ice age. There was only one.
Both of these are unsubstantiated claims. There's clear evidence for multiple ice ages, and adding lots and lots of water does not make anything colder.
That happened a few hundred years after the flood.
Which would explain many of the ice age fossils we find near the surface of the earth, not deep down in the flood layers.
Like saber-toothed cats.
And woolly mammoths.
And Hyracotherium.
Impressive.
Thank you.
The reason that all of these animals are in the upper layers is because they were all very recent. They lived between 60 million and 4,000 years ago, all of which is very young from a geological perspective.
Also, the book of Job was written just about that time and mentioned snow, ice, and cold more than any other book in the Bible.
Actually, the book of Job was not written in this time. So this is just coincidence, if you can call it that. But those words simply aren't mentioned much in the Bible at all, and the book of Proverbs mentions cold more than the book of Job.
So, when scientists try to stretch 5 extinctions and 5 different ice ages over the evolutionary view of the geologic column,
You mean when we see actual evidence of such things?
they're not sure how they happen.
Why do we need to know how they happen in order to know that they happen?
But when you compress the geologic column down into a biblical time frame, it's all explained by a worldwide flood followed by an ice age.
You mean when you believe the writings of ancient, ignorant people, you change your perception of the world to better fit your preconceived notion, regardless of the actual evidence.
Yep. Kind of makes you think, doesn't it?